potential to be kind of an alias?
Sure. Well, that would be awesome. I love that show.
Do you see those comparisons?
Yeah, I think anytime you do any kind of genre show, and this one is sort of that action adventure thriller, you're going to be compared to the best things in that genre. And Alias, without a doubt, was one of the best TV shows and pilots. I was just with Victor Garber this morning talking about, he was telling us the story of when he first watched the pilot of Alias and how it's, like, he couldn't believe that he was in this thing, you know? So, yeah, I mean, I obviously hope to be in the vein of that, but also be your own thing over time. And I think with this cast and with Martin, you know, Garrow, who created it, I think it will be very much its own thing.
So I think there's still a lack of female action heroes on the screen. I feel like TV's now doing that a little better than the movie.
Yeah, I mean, just as I can probably speak most of that as an audience member, you know, I mean, it would be nice to see more of it, you know. That being said, you know, Martin came in and pitched this show, and it wasn't really intentional on my part that I thought, okay, this is going to be cool because it's about a woman. It just was a really compelling story that happened to be about a female lead, and had an equally compelling story for Kurt Weller as well. So, who was played, you know, brilliantly by Sully Stapleton. So, you know, but yeah, I mean, I think I definitely get asked the question a lot, so it's clearly on people's minds.
Yeah.
And people should be better about it.
Yeah. You're like leading the charge now with this and Supergirl. I mean, you're kind of
well, hopefully they both, you know, people, they're very different. I mean, I did, you know, there have been events that I've been at with Jamie and with Melissa, and I don't even know, but I don't know if they've officially met yet, or but I tell them all the time, what's so nice is that their characters are so different, and they're so different, but equally compelling, and we're really incredibly lucky to have both of them. I'm really proud of that.
Because of the mystery that you have surrounding the whole premise of the show, does that prevent you from doing episodic, or are you going to mainly focus on the whole overall serialized version?
It has both. I would say every week you get a little bit more of that and her and that journey, but it has very much close-ended cases too. So I think it works on both ways. There's obviously, like any of these things, there's some episodes that are a touch more procedural, and then there are other episodes that are a touch more serialized, and that's okay too, so that you don't feel like you're going to get the same thing every week when you show up. But no, I don't think they prohibit one another.
Well, I mean, what is your passion and the focus? Are you really invested in the serialized aspects of it, or?
I like both. You know, I mean, again, Martin is a fan of both himself too. I think I have a little bit more experience with the serialized stuff because I haven't done quite as many procedurals or whatever. But so it's always fun to do something that's new too, in that way, and that it is, you know, more than some of the other shows, you know, even though there's heightened elements, it's still really grounded, and the procedural stuff is still really grounded.
When Martin pitched this to you, what hooked you in, and can you kind of tell us what's coming up in the show?
I think what really hooked me in the most was is always his passion. You know, I just know the journey that you have to take from like that moment through the script and the production and casting and making it, and like if the person's like kind of half telling you a story, he was so passionate about this. He's like, I've loved mysteries and treasure maps my whole life. I used to draw them for friends as a kid, you know. So it was a part of it, and then just from start to finish, her journey, the sense of like from where it starts, a naked lady getting out of a bag, to, you know, to where it ends up by the end in terms of her relationship with this other man and her dynamic with this other man at the end of the pilot, and her search for answers as to who she is. I felt like it was cool that she was both really badass and also really empathetic, because you could understand, like, oh my gosh, like if that happened to me, that would be awful.
At the end, the story becomes a little ambiguous with the puzzle and how, like, the origin of it and why it is the way it is. Can you talk about, like, how that's going to come out timing-wise? Is that something that people kind of...
You will learn more and more about her origin over the first year. We're not going to be screwing with the audience in that way, you know, and it won't mean it won't have twists and turns, and it will hopefully there will be unexpected elements to it, but that is the intention of that sort of twist in terms of her at the end of the pilot and what her own role may have been in some of this.
Like as far as like whether that it's good intentions or bad intentions, is that something that's
That is going to be explored for sure. In fact, over the first couple of episodes, she starts to ask herself some of these things in terms of, am I good or am I bad? What made me? And what's nice about it is that they're kind of all questions we all ask ourselves as adults and about our own identity, I think. And she gets to ask them in a really primal way because of the nature of her situation.
You're obviously, very experienced showrunner. You've had experience in this. So, I mean, coming at this project, was it easier to know kind of like what journey you wanted to take, how you wanted to plot it out, knowing that you wanted
I wish it would get easier. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like sometimes the more I do stuff, I'm like, how did I not get better at this? So anyway, no, it wasn't. I mean, I think it's you do learn from some mistakes, in terms of like, oh gosh, I'm not sure, but it's been about the partnership for me with Martin. I mean, he's an incredible writer. I really wanted to work with him before he pitched this, and he's got he does the procedural element, but he's incredibly, you'll know if you've sat with him, I don't know if you've sat with him yet, he's incredibly funny too, and he's written on comedies, and so he brings even though it's serious and grounded, there's a real levity still to the both the process and making the show with him, but also the characters, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun for the audience.
She drew parallels to Alias, but I'm curious from your point of view, where do you see it falling into what has anything inspired you? What would you draw parallels to?
I mean, there's obvious. I think people bring up Bourne a lot when they sort of talk about it, and people bring up Blacklist a lot because it's another BL title that was in the 10 o'clock slot, I think, on NBC. But just in the sense of you want heightened elements, but it wasn't until you go to make the pilot that you kind of know what it's going to feel like and be. So you have all those ideas and do the page, and then it becomes its own sort of thing when you watch it. And I love what Mark Pellington, who directed it, brought to the look and the feel of it. It just feels like this, and I'm not sure that that's something that we could have conceived. That's why he does what he does so well.
How did you decide, when she lost her memory, how did you decide how much of her personality was going to come through? Because when I was watching the pilot, in the first couple, it seemed like she was kind of a blank slate, but then very quickly, you could see who she is. How did you decide where that line was going to be?
I think it was just as we were kind of arcing out the episode, just that sense of how would we behave. At first you kind of are just in shock and sort of putting it together, and then at some point you're like, hey, wait a second, you want her to be proactive about I'm going to figure this out on my own too. I'm not going to wait for these people to tell me who I am, and so I think it was really by the midpoint of the pilot you really see her start to claim her own space, which is good. She's still scared, and I think it's that nice balance between it. And then really, honestly, in the weeks leading up to production, Jamie comes in and she brings her own that duality of seeming really vulnerable one moment that you're talking about, and then really tough the next. It's her performance. So her and everybody on set decided it together, I think.
Do you worry at all about the tattoo aspect of it? As far as, I know it takes a long time to put on, and
yeah, they have it all worked out. If it's a full body, it's I don't know, 182 hours or something. if it's just from here up, if we're seeing from here up, it's 4 hours. It's there's a timing to it logistically. But Martin and the writers have come up with incredible ways to sort of even take tattoos we've examined once in the show and see them in a new light and re-examine them. And there's some of that stuff which I think the audience is going to see, that there's twists and turns and layers. They have a gentleman working on the show who's one of the New York Times who creates puzzles for the New York Times. So there's really fun elements about that too that I think people really get into.
It's a great ensemble cast as well around Jamie. What do you think makes, say, Sully or Marianne so perfect for those roles?
I think it's just their reality. I think whenever you're dealing with anything that's heightened, the more real you get to cast the actors, and the more grounded they are, the more you believe it. You're like, oh, this is really happening, And they all bring that. Rob Brown, and they all bring it.